Hi, folks. We want you to use the YouTube chat, our old friend from the old show, The Opening Drive. And by the way, this is the opening drive of the Randy Karraker Show featuring Brooke Grimsley. But our old friend Nancy Renee checks in, says, good morning, STL sports fans. Good to have Nancy and Carol with us. Carol has always been with us, a very loyal listener and viewer. Thank you very much. Good to have you with us on the YouTube. Brooke, Matthew, Randy, and got some ball to talk because we thought we were going to talk about one rumor, and then we changed our minds like 15 minutes ago, which is we're allowed to do.
We are.
We've got a woman on the show.
What is that? What is that? Whoa. What is this slander that I'm getting into this?
Have you ever changed your mind on the fly, Brooke?
No,
once?
absolutely
Never? Not once?
No. You're saying that men don't do this?
Oh, we don't do that. We are just set in our ways.
Come on. No.
Yes, let's ignore the moment where Tony La Russa made the wrong call to the bullpen.
Oh, yeah.
Men never change their minds, Randy.
No, he was just wrong. And Lance Lynn shows up and he says, what are you doing here? In the World Series.
Yes, it's only women who change their minds.
One of the best things in radio is Charlie Marlowe many years ago doing a Tony La Russa impression. Give me Zepchinski. It's not even a Tony La Russa impression, but it makes me laugh every single time. I can't wait to have Charlie on the show.
In the same vein too, women are the more dramatic ones, but Tony La Russa wasn't known for tossing tables or anything like that.
No drama there. Hey, in his chat yesterday at stltoday.com, Derek Gould intimated that the Cardinals might entertain offers for right-hander Erick Fedde. If somebody will make an offer, do it. Fedde didn't perform well for the Cardinals after coming over from the Chi Sox last year, along with Tommy Pham. We
had one great moment with Tommy Pham.
Tommy Pham had a grand slam.
Yes,
first
that was exciting.
But then went downhill from there for the other 2 weeks he was here.
That faded away quickly, didn't it?
It sure did. And but here's the thing, Brooke. You really didn't give up anything. You only gave up like the NLCS MVP in that deal. So no biggie.
No.
But so right now you're looking at that's what you have, Erick Fedde in exchange for Tommy Edman. The Mets, though, have already lost Frankie Montas for the first couple of months of the season. They've also lost Sean Manaea. He pulled an oblique. And remember, now you don't know the severity of that oblique, but it was an oblique injury that kept Jack Flaherty out for 3.5 months in 2021, the one that he suffered on Memorial Day.
Exactly. Yeah, that's something that you have to watch for. I want to go back to Erick Fedde because that is really interesting. One of the reasons why the Cardinals found him so appealing in the first place was that contract. Because remember, it was 2 years. So now he has 1 year left, $7.5 million left on that current contract. That makes him really appealing to move. And Derek Gould, when he was talking about this, now it's important to note that Gould says in the article that he's not saying that they're going to do this before the season starts. This is something that they're just possibly open to looking at with Erick Fedde. And he mentions that they're doing this. They're open, one, because of payroll, which I know that's always it's true. I was going to say touchy subject, but I think all the fans know at this point that a lot of this is about payroll. So moving payroll, but also opening up the door for some of your young pitchers like a Michael McGreevy is who he said in the article.
Now, a couple of things here. Let's start with the money aspect of things because Fedde's would be different than Arenado. At $7.5 million in baseball today, kind of nothing.
It really does seem like
it's
nothing,
a lot to us, but it's kind of nothing, right?
It's a lot to us, but yeah for baseball, not so much. Yeah. That's so easy to move.
I would think that the Cardinals could get something back in return for him. That's my point here, is that he would be a guy that because of his history, he'll not give you a ton of innings, but he's a reliable fourth or fifth starter. Maybe even better than that if you can coach him up the way that the White Sox did last year. The other point here is you don't have to worry about Michael McGreevy failing. And because Michael McGreevy pitched so well last year, sub-2 ERA, he should get the first opportunity. And if you have a rotation of Gray, Michaelis, Matz, Palante, and McGreevy fails, you plug in Gordon Graceffo, who was great yesterday.
We saw
Graceffo fails, you plug in Matthew Liberatore. Liberatore fails, you plug in Zach Thompson. You've got a lot of different options if you're the Cardinals, and you open a spot for McGreevy and he doesn't work out.
And you also will see today, Quinn Mathews is another pitcher that a lot of people are excited to see because remember, he was the Cardinals' number 3 prospect and he just rose through the Cardinals system last year. He performed really well at every single level. I think that he had ended up with a 2.76 ERA, something along those lines. And
more than 200 strikeouts.
Yeah, he looked really good. So that's even another possibility. He's going today and they're facing the Blue Jays and we'll see Max Scherzer out there. But I think that this is actually a really good idea. If you're not able to move on for Nolan Arenado, I'm not surprised that the Cardinals will be looking elsewhere to continue with this youth movement of making it. They call this the runway, right?
Mhm.
I know that somebody on the YouTube chat mentioned the other day that they'll take a shot every time that we say runway. But that's what we heard from Ricky Horton yesterday, is that they're kind of opening up this runway for these younger players. You move on from Fedde, as you mentioned, that contract is really interesting for a lot of people. So that's payroll that you move, also making some room for your young pitchers, which is what we wanted to see, because we're talking about a lot positionally for the Cardinals, but how do you make room for these young pitchers where they can get opportunities at the big league level in the starting rotation?
And here's the thing. If you cobble a group of young starters together, are they going to be any worse than Erick Fedde? I mean, is Erick Fedde going to be that much better that you don't want to make a deal? I'm all in on the youth movement, but I don't like the idea of having an old starting rotation that's not going to get substantially better, and then a young lineup. I want these guys to grow up together, and that's why I think they should move a guy like Fedde. They're stuck with Michaelis, and as I've mentioned before, at least Michaelis will give you innings. But if they move Fedde and Matz,
they might not be pretty innings,
right?
At times,
but they're going to be innings. If they move Fedde and Matz, that won't break my heart at all. And by the way, one point we need to make, Brooke, about Quinn Mathews is he pitched all 4 years at Stanford. He's 24.
Yeah.
He's relatively speaking in baseball terms, not a pup. He's got a lot of experience at high level college baseball, pitched in the Pac-12, pitched in the College World Series, threw 156 pitches in a World Series game. So I think that they're going to have to, at some point, get Quinn Mathews up here this year.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you want to waste that arm. Last year, by the way, at 4 different levels, he was 8-5, but had a 2.76 earned run average. And the big thing was 143 in the third innings and 202 strikeouts to 49 walks.
We talked to him on the radio show.
Yeah, he's smart.
I forgot, did he have a different surgery than Tommy John, or was there something that he went through? I was trying to remember what the story was there. Maybe he did a paper on it specifically.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Because he's from Stanford. He's smart.
Yeah,
also, where Tommy
really
Edman went.
Yeah, right. He's smart too.
Yeah.
But he made 14 starts in his sophomore year. He only pitched 4 games in his freshman year at Stanford. Then he threw 27 games, 9 starts as a junior, and then as a senior made 18 starts, and that was the year that he had the great World Series, College World Series game. So I am going to watch Quinn Mathews today. He's going to be there on FanDuel Midwest, and I'm intrigued to see what his stuff looks like. And I hope the Cardinals don't say, well, we have to protect him because he's young, because Stanford is kind of like playing double-A ball.
It is,
right?
yeah.
And so he's got a lot of experience, and I think the Cardinals shouldn't overrate the minor leagues. We know that they do, but they shouldn't.
We just got a question in from the chat, and I think this is more of like a statement, because I'm looking forward to this too. I'm looking forward to the day that Wynn and Weatherholt man shortstop and at second. That will be exciting. It might be a little bit longer for Weatherholt, obviously with Wynn here already now, but with Weatherholt, I think a lot of people are excited. I know that it was just a home run, obviously, the other day. It's spring training. You can't be fooled by spring training. But we talked to Ricky yesterday. He talked about how he just really carries himself as a big leaguer. He
is a great bat to ball guy. We've said it before on the show, but if you haven't heard, J.J. Weatherholt was thought at the beginning of the college baseball season last year as the number 1 overall pick. And then he suffered injuries and fell down to 7th? The Cardinals have the 7th pick. And he has big league star ability. It'll be interesting to see. It's interesting also how, and maybe the Cardinals feel this way too, I think Brendan Donovan is an excellent defensive player. I think he's a rock. I think he's a leader. I think he's a great guy to have on the middle infield. And we already can't wait to get him out of there to get J.J. Weatherholt in.
I don't want that to happen. I wish we could have both.
I know. Our YouTube chatter wanted.
Yeah, Brendan Donovan is so valuable. I think he's valuable in many different aspects. This team performs better offensively when he's in the lineup. We saw that even last season. If he wasn't there, that they actually were impacted offensively. But he's a great leader, and that's just something that I think is great to have that clubhouse. I mean, I think he was a difference maker when it comes to bringing the guys together.
Brooke, I would argue that right now, the leaders on this team are Wilson Contreras and Brendan Donovan.
Oh, if you ask all the players, they're bringing up Brendan Donovan and they're bringing up Wilson Contreras.
Yeah, but I don't think Arenado is in that group. I think Arenado is a really hard worker and a great lead by example guy. but he's not a guy that's going to try to help people out. He's not a guy that is going to recognize a youngster making his major league debut and getting him an expensive giant. Is it a bottle of champagne or wine?
It was like a bottle of champagne
that
everybody signed in the clubhouse.
Right. And so Donovan does that for players that are making their major league debut. He thinks of other people and thinks of that sort of thing. So I think he's a valuable guy to have. And somebody made the point, it might have been on the chat yesterday. Why not move? Oh, no, it was Derek Gould's chat.
Yeah.
Why not move J.J. Weatherholt to center field now? Because Donovan is going to be there and they're loaded with middle infielders. I don't think that's a bad idea. It wouldn't be unlike when they moved Tommy Edman, probably too late in his career, to center field. But Tommy Edman's going to start in center field for the world champions.
Yeah, I don't see why not. Just go ahead and get him reps out there. So we have a question from Bill, and he says, move Fedde, Matt, and Helsley. And I want to couple this with something. Andy put this up earlier. We missed it. But he talked about with the Mets injuries, I wonder if they go after Fedde. Are the Mets a possibility at this point for the Cardinals?
I think that's the team. Yeah, that's who I would be calling. Now, Mo says that he's not going to be aggressive, but why not?
There's no way that he's not fielding calls right now. So.
But I think you have to take advantage. This has happened to the Cardinals. It happened at the deadline a few years ago. You have to take advantage of other teams' weaknesses and be a vulture.
Yeah.
And go in and say, okay, I know you don't have Montas and you might not have Manaea for a long time. I've got a guy who can solve your problem right now, and he's a pretty good major league pitcher. I don't know why he's not more aggressive and trying to, I know they're calling it a transition now rather than a reset. I don't know why they just don't go with the reset. They aren't going to be a whole lot different. If they trade Erick Fedde today and they plug those four guys, young kids, into this rotation that we just talked about, it would be, who did I say? I said McGreevy, Liberatore, Graceffo, maybe Mathews. And maybe Zach Thompson. Yeah, those five.
Having that. Yeah.
The team is not going to be appreciably worse if Erick Fedde isn't there and those guys are at the back of the rotation.
No, and then you actually get those young guys a chance because you mentioned they're all in that kind of like mid-20s range. You want to know what they have and if they're ready for the big leagues. I think that whole situation with the Mets is really interesting because their starting rotation is just really thin right now. As you mentioned, Montas with the injury, and now we know with Manaea. They talked about Jose Quintana as a possibility, and I could see that working out, but there's a lot of different injuries that are going on around the league. And I know you wanted to mention Stanton too, because there's a lot yesterday with Giancarlo Stanton. He's not down in Florida. He's over in New York. And a lot of people are like, that tennis elbow, though, didn't seem like it was a big deal. Maybe it's a big deal now.
Tendinitis, it hurts.
Yeah.
Ow.
But now they're saying, Boone was saying yesterday, he told reporters that it was more of a personal issue.
So here's the quote when he was asked about it. He said, I can tell you that he's in New York, but it's personal in nature, and I'm going to leave it at that for now. That's all I can comment on that. Well, I would say that if you have sore elbows, that's personal. It doesn't affect anybody else except for you. Stanton did arrive in New York, and Boone said he didn't know when he might return to Tampa, saying hopefully soon. But the other point to be made here is that Boone said nothing had changed with regard to the condition of Stanton's elbows. He's been dealing with tennis elbow in both arms, had it last season, went through the entire offseason, and they said that he hasn't picked up a bat in weeks. Now, the Yankees' projected lineup with Stanton has the rookie Jason Dominguez in left field, Judge in right, Bellinger in center, Stanton as the DH, Jazz Chisholm would be their number 5 hitter, Goldie number 6, and then the bottom of their lineup is Austin Wells, who had a good year last year but was terrible in the second half, their catcher, Anthony Volpe, who's a limited offensive player, and Oswaldo Cabrera, who nobody knows anything about offensively. But if you don't have Stanton in the middle of that lineup, then all of a sudden you move Goldie up, and you're trying to plug in DJ LeMahieu or Trent Grisham as your DH platoon. I think that's a real problem. And that's why I think if I were Brian Cashman, I would be cautious here about the ability of Stanton to come back. Stanton is not a guy that has come back well. He's averaged 110 games a year in 6 years with the Yankees. So he's a guy that is prone to not being there. If I were the Yankees and I were trying to win this year, I would be on the phone right now with the Cardinals about Nolan Arenado.
I'm surprised that there isn't more about that with Nolan Arenado and the Yankees, because it's just a fit that makes a lot of sense for many different reasons. As you mentioned in the lineup there, that you could plug Arenado in and it would make a difference. But also, too, he has that connection with Paul Goldschmidt. You know that he's really hungry to win a championship and he wants to perform at a high level. So why not work something out with the Yankees?
And sometimes when you have one guy, he doesn't handle the pressure well, especially in a place like New York.
But there, he's not the star.
He's not the star. I look at Nolan Arenado, great, Hall of Fame player, and he's been a great Cardinal. I don't want to take anything away from that. But I do think that I thought when the Cardinals got him that he was a Batman, that he was a centerpiece player, the guy that you want up there every single time you're in a tie game or down a run and you have a runner in scoring position in the ninth inning. He's not that guy. He's a great player, but he's just not that guy. And we were so spoiled by Albert, right?
Oh,
but man, he did it a lot.
Yeah.
And the MV3 did it a lot. But I think if you have an MV3, if you have Judge, Bellinger, and Goldie, and even a guy like Chisholm, who's great with the media, Arenado can just go about his business in the corner of the clubhouse and not talk to people and just go out and hit a bunch. And I think that's what he is. He's a really good player, but he's not a guy that is going to be a leader, and especially in a place like New York.
Well, you also think, just kind of piggybacking off of that real quick, but you also think about 2022, you were talking about being that guy. That was a situation during the playoffs. Who was it that showed up the most for the Cardinals offensively in those big moments in 2022 during the playoffs? It was Pujols, and it was Yachty.
Yeah, exactly.
That was it wasn't Arenado, is my point, and it wasn't Goldie.
Those guys really struggled.
Yes, John weighs in on the chat too. He said should have traded Newt last year when his value was highest.
Do you think his value was highest last year?
I don't think so. I really don't.
I don't either.
Think injury-wise.
Yeah, and he didn't really perform that well. I think maybe the offseason that the other Contreras, William Contreras, and Sean Murphy got traded, and the A's wanted Nootbaar in a trade for Murphy, and the Marlins were interested in Nootbaar too. But everybody is enamored of his analytics. Everybody, and
so are the Cardinals.
Yeah, that's why he's not gone yet. But if you look last year, Brooke, at his first and second half splits, he only played 45 games out of 90 in the first half. And he hit 229, 712 OPS. I don't think his value at the trade deadline was high last year.
No, I really don't think that was. I think that they're hoping that he'll be healthier going this year. Because if you remember, Lars Nootbaar even went last season and did like a whole body scan because he was so injury prone that he wanted to see if he was maybe there was something else going on. And he said he's fine. So hopefully he'll be healthy this season. GB says Helsley's value will never be higher. And I'd let Bloom do the work on this one. Now, this is really interesting because of the kind of the two part of this. Bloom, as we know, is working on the minor league system this year, but we've talked about that. These moves that are going to be made, whether you're going into the season, if they're able to accomplish something, or even at the trade deadline, will affect the start of Bloom's career as the new Pobo. And so I think that's an interesting part. And Helsley's value, I agree, his value is high, especially after last year. That was the chance I felt like to get the most out of him.
I agree 100%. And that's another guy. And I think the Cardinals might have missed an opportunity because of their insistence on saying, yeah, we want to compete this year. They probably missed the best window to move Helsley, who during his career has spent a lot of time on the IL. And last year was just a magical year for him. Now, did his approach to baseball change? Was he more available on back-to-back days last year? Absolutely. But if I'm Ryan Helsley this year, and I went to arbitration last year with the Cardinals and lost, and granted, they did give me the $8 million for this year. But if you're Ryan Helsley, are you trying to protect yourself for free agency this year?
Yeah, I think so. I think that adds to it even more because Helsley, along with Tyler O'Neill, were both very vocal about how they didn't enjoy the arbitration process with the Cardinals. It really changes the player's perspective. We're not in those rooms, of course, but just giving glimpses into what they were acting like, what the conversation was like with the Cardinals, it gets really personal in those conversations, and it really kind of changes the player's outlook on, oh, okay, so, it's personal. You say it's not personal, but it was personal. This is a business. I'm going to treat it like a business too.
Dallas Myers checks in on the YouTube chat, says, I'm more excited to see the young players get meaningful playing time instead of the false hope of the team being contenders like they tried to push in the past. That's the way I feel too with Dallas Myers. By the way, there was a football player back in the 70s named Dallas Hickman, and he got signed by the Washington Redskins and George Allen. And George Allen, the head coach of the Redskins at the time, wanted Dallas Hickman to change his first name to Washington Hickman.
Really?
Yeah. He didn't do it, but Dallas Hickman, I don't think, lasted long with the Redskins either. Yeah, but he hated Dallas so much, George Allen did. He wanted the guy to change his name from Dallas to Washington.
But that was a really good point, though, by Dallas. And that's what we were talking about with Erick Fedde. For those who are tuning in right now, Erick Fedde is a name that Derek Gould listed as a trade possibility that the Cardinals could be looking at so that you can make room for these young pitchers. If I'm the Cardinals, I am trying to move Erick Fedde.
Yeah.
Is there somebody you could package Erick Fedde with?
Arenado.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
Yeah, that gets a lot of money off of your books.
I didn't even know if there was a Matz Fedde combo that you could do, which opens up things even more for that starting rotation.
I wouldn't have any problem with that. I think that'd be interesting. Hey, I want to give a thank you to Michael Jagger, who's checking in from Taiwan. He's on the YouTube chat and he says, "Good evening from Taiwan." So we have podcast consumers from literally all over the world here. And Michael, thank you very much for joining us from Taiwan. I wish you'd tell us what you're doing over there.
Yeah, that's what I want to know. All the way in Taiwan and watching. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, that's so cool. And we're very thankful that you are with us.
What's the last international trip that you've done?
Oh,
what
man.
is the last?
Well, pre-pandemic. It's been a while. How about you?
Where did you go?
Well, when's the last one? I think probably a Caribbean cruise.
Oh, nice.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
For me, it was just last year, honeymoon, Croatia.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Croatia. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Croatia is amazing.
Yeah,
it's so good.
Take her advice. Yeah, go to Croatia.
It's so good. We have a question here from Justin. Big question. How long will the Cardinals keep Luke and Baker? He's been in the St. Louis system a long time. I don't think they believe they can get much out of moving him, is my take.
Apparently, they were approached by, I think, a Japanese league team, and they would not give Baker up because they like him too much. That being said, he is 27 years old. He'll be 28 on March 10th.
He's going to be 28?
Yeah, and hasn't really had much opportunity at the big league level. So I would think this is it for him. How long will they keep him? If he doesn't make the club out of spring training, I wonder what the point is of just letting him languish at the minor league level.
Yeah, unless they just like having him in the minor league system.
And if he likes it, let's see, he's played, I'm trying to get his minor league, 6 years in the minors. So TCU guy, Matt Carpenter protege.
Wow.
Yeah.
So a long time in the minors.
Yeah. And especially after playing 3 years of college ball. So I could see how, especially after the last couple of years, how he would get frustrated. 33 home runs in 2023 for Memphis. And then last year, he hit 32 in Memphis and hit 2 home runs in each of those years for the Cardinals as well.
And they did bring him up, and it just was not panning out in the way. I think they just view him as a one-tool player. I
think so. His major league OPS is 645. His major league batting average is 198. So, yeah, he is kind of a 4A guy.
Yeah. We have from Rip It Up
single
Cards.
A, double A, triple A. 4A is like between major leagues and AAA. That's kind of what he is.
From Rip It Up Cards, what about a 3-team trade? Nolan to the Yankees, Stroman to the Mets, and the kids to the Cardinals?
I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's some former Cardinals that love 3-ways, and I think this would be a good one. What's wrong, Matthew? I think this would be a good 3-way trade. Stroman back to the Mets.
You're on one this morning.
Hockey Dad Don says, I think Stanton has been hanging out with Anthony Davis. Street clothes, yeah. I don't think there's any doubt about it.
I'm glad that you quickly put up a different question to bring on. And now we're getting a break.
Did we have another high quality question? Can we revert? Oh, yeah. Stan's been hanging out with Anthony Davis. So, yeah, there you go. That's where is your mind this morning?
Oh, come on. You knew what you were doing there. 100%. And now we're being told to break. So we do need to break because we have Mike Claiborne who is waiting to talk to us. But first, Randy, we have to talk about our kickoff party coming up.
It's going to be awesome. It's Thursday night for our Sports Hub STL kickoff party at the new Hot Shots on Lindbergh in Lee. You can come and meet the team and enjoy great food and drink specials. The party starts at 6 as the Blues game gets underway at Washington against Alex Ovechkin and the Capitals. We're going to watch the game, have great prize giveaways, and the Blues Hub postgame show will broadcast live after the game. 2 lucky Blues fans that night and a few of their friends will win the very first Sports Hub STL St. Louis sports experience. That includes watching a Blues road game at a private party with Blues alums, Sports Hub STL staff, and more. Want a chance to win? Here's what you need to do. Come out to the Sports Hub STL kickoff party Thursday night at the new Hot Shots on Lindbergh in Lime. Hot Shots, St. Louis home for all the games all the time since 1990. Find yours at hotshotsnet.com.
And now we head over to Jupiter, Florida. We have Claiborne waiting for us. Mike Claiborne. There he is. Are you down in Florida right
I
now?
am in Florida.
Wow.
that
I was
background.
expecting palm trees.
Palm trees?
But I like this background.
I can
too.
show you palm trees. They're just outside my window here.
Oh, nice.
So it's cool.
Now, Claibs, we were just talking about Erick Fedde because Derek Gould has in his latest article where he talks about Erick Fedde as a possibility of being moved during what's going on, Rocchio? I heard Rocchio laughing in the background. I didn't even get to see that. But we were talking about Erick Fedde. Derek Gould was talking about him being a possibility as the Cardinals look to possibly move players and make room for young starting pitchers. Do you see that as something that could work out for them?
Well, there's a lot of guys that fit that mold. I'm sure somebody was bring up Steven Matz. I'm sure Derek will have a story on that pretty soon. You have Miles Michaelis. I mean, although Miles has a no trade, there are a lot of guys they're exploring. And, my thing is this. Every year we start the season with, boy, we have a lot of pitching. I mean, what are we going to do with all these guys? And then come July, somebody's saying, boy, we need pitching. We need more pitching. This thing normally takes care of itself with regard to injury, teams that have an interest. Remember, nobody's really looking to move anybody right now. They want to evaluate what they actually have because you're not going to win the World Series or get to the playoffs in March or April. You want to make sure that you have some assets that you can count on down the stretch. And like I said, a lot of these things take care of themselves. Every year when Steven Matz has been on the team, we always felt like he was going to be an important part. And every year Steven Matz has been injured for one reason or another. So it just is how that works. So let's just put the trade thing on the back burner for a while. It's nice to talk about, but I don't think anybody's looking to move anybody this early in the game.
And Claibs, we go back to when the Cardinals got Jim Edmonds right at the end of spring training, or last year the Arise move, or the Dylan Cease move, right at the end of spring training. So it does happen, but teams do need the opportunity to evaluate. And there are just some teams out there, and specifically the Mets, and the Cardinals saw them yesterday, that are dealing with the injuries to Montas and Minaya. And Montas isn't going to be there. Montas probably won't be there because that's who he is. He just doesn't pitch a lot. And I think there's going to be teams out there that expect to be good that are going to need starting pitching by the end of spring training.
Oh, yeah. And it gives the Mets, and we saw a couple of their arms yesterday, that you said to yourself, not bad. And they may get a push up because at some point, with as expensive as that payroll is, you have to find some bargains somewhere on that roster. And maybe it might become via young pitching. And I think also they have to really kind of assess their farm system to see just what do they have. And that's why they're going to get some more innings early. And if they still determine by the third week of March that we need some help initially, maybe they go out and make a deal. But remember, you have the month of April where you have a lot of off dates. So you might be able to slip and slide a little bit until somebody is able to come back and help you that's already hurt.
Claibs, what about JJ Weatherholt? Obviously a big weekend for him, even in the loss. That was a huge moment for him. What have you seen from JJ just so far in the spring training?
Well, let's not measure him for a statue yet, but I like what I see early with regard to his approach. I mean, remember, he's 22 years old. He's not a kid. So he would be likened to a guy as a college player. I always look at guys like him as somewhere AA at that stage of their careers. But he has an interesting hitting approach. I like his swing. We've only seen it a couple of times, in game competition. But you can see some traits on why teams thought a lot of him as far as drafting him as early as they did. Where is he going to play next? Well, I don't know whether you heard or not, but we have a dearth of left-handed hitting second baseman. So I'm not sure if we need another one. But that may be where he ends up. If it doesn't work out at third base as far as Gorman or Arenado, maybe that's a spot for him. So I think that the jury is still out on what his final position will be. Because he's versatile, that certainly helps the situation more than having a guy who's limited. And, if you look at the Cardinals roster, they have a lot of versatility on infielders as far as them being able to play multiple positions.
Claibs, we would have never thought when Tommy Edman first came up that he would wind up being an outfielder like he was. From a tools perspective, what does Weatherholt possess? Would he have what it takes, for example, to play center field from what you've seen so far?
Well, it's early. I don't know if I haven't seen him really go back on balls well enough yet to see if he can play any other position other than the infield. But today, Randy and Brooke, baseball is getting more athletes. There was a time where we went through a stretch where guys were only playing baseball, and I thought that was bad. Now you're seeing some guys who are able to transition from one sport to another, and I think that's really what this game has been all about, well before everybody went 13 months of baseball. So that may take time, but this is a time when you can learn how to play those positions. And let's face it, the more you can play, the more positions you can play, the more valuable you are. And I think we've seen that with Edman. We've seen it with Donovan. We've seen it with a few other guys. So if you're limited, like a Luke and Baker, well, your options aren't as great.
Claibs, what have you observed from the ABS system down
I
there
love
and
it.
how the players are? You love it. Wow.
love it.
I like that.
Yeah. It makes everyone accountable. We all knew Lars Nootbaar was going to be the first Cardinal to tap the head.
Mm-hmm.
But here's something someone brought up yesterday. Normally when it's 3 balls, no strikes, and there's the old automatic, the umpire calls a strike and the ball's in the other batter's box. Now you may see a guy that's not a strike. And now all of a sudden, now you have a guy on base because it's a walk. And there are little other things that you have to take into account now that were gimmies, that now it's going to keep the hitter honest because his body language may say one thing, but the ABS is going to say another. You're going to have pitchers who were normally able to get that pitch for a strike that's now fallen out of the strike zone. And you're going to have umpires who have been traditionally known to have a relaxed strike zone, or, as I said, the 3-0 count. He just is an automatic strike no matter what. So everybody's accountable, which means they're going to have to bear down, which means they're going to have to focus, which means they're going to put the ball in play a little bit more, or certainly be in a better position to create more offense.
I have an umpire in my mind already. Which umpire do you think is going to hate ABS the most?
It would have been
his first 2 initials are CB. That's mine.
CB would be one. Mike Estabrook is another guy who has a tendency to have a different league than the one he's working for. There's a handful of guys. Although I will say this, I think that Major League Baseball has as good of a group of young umpires, and there may be 8, maybe 10 of them that I think are going to be the true face of this game, where you're going to get an honest day's work. You're going to get a legitimate, competitive, professional effort. And I'm not sure if I could have said that 10 years ago, because there were guys that were all over the place. And while I know that they pushed back initially about some of the technology that's in play, I think it's made them better umpires. And the numbers prove it, that there are some guys who were like lights out. Throw in the fact this year, the old Fox box as we used to know it, that won't be in play, as they're going to just dot where the strike is. So, and they decided to truly align the strike zone from how the umpires have been graded. Because if you talk to any umpire, he'll tell you, well, that strike zone you see on TV is not the one we go by. So now that they've been able to marry the two, we'll get a more competitive, honest look at how strikes are being called in baseball.
And Claibs, I agree with what you said about a decade ago. And I think we can trace it back. Here's what I think happened. For about 5 years, Sandy Alderson was in charge of the umpires, and he really held them accountable. And then he went over to take over the Mets front office, and he left the Major League Baseball front office. And the Major League Baseball replaced him with our friend, we love, Joe Torre. But Joe's philosophy with the umpires was, I'm their only friend. And
which is unusual because Joe wasn't a good friend to any umpire when he played or managed.
Exactly. But he babied those guys, and he allowed them to not perform at the level they had been forced to perform at under Sandy Alderson. I think that's what happened.
I think that's part of it. I think that's part of it. And I think Joe wanted to be an objective guy when he had been accused of being a guy that was not a friend of umpires. So he may have bent over backwards to try and give them a comfort level of knowing we're all on the same team for once. Since Mike Hill has taken over, Mike Hill, if you look at his resume, it's a pretty impressive one. He was a general manager or president of the Miami Marlins before he took the job inside of Major League Baseball. And Mike has kind of brought this thing back to the middle, where Mike is a guy that not only talks to umpires, but he also talks to managers as well with regard to, whether it's an ejection or what are they seeing, to make sure they're all on the same page and not be as adversarial as they once were. Now, my thing is, if we have this ABS, that doesn't mean somebody's not going to get thrown out of a game. Because can you imagine, Randy, a guy who's always chirped and an umpire misses the call and that hitter is still in the batter's box and he muffles something like, too bad we didn't have this 5 years ago when you were missing call. Somebody's going to say something that's going to still get themselves tossed. But you may not hear as much chirping from the dugout as you once did.
Yeah. Aaron Boone's going to be the first guy this year, isn't he? Even with ABS?
Yeah, I think Aaron is, let's put it this way. He's in the clubhouse with the lead. Ollie might be either he or Descalzo. They may find themselves in the running for one of the three finalists. But there's not as much chirping from the dugout as there used to be, from players, from coaches, managers. I don't know why. Obviously, they only can complain about balls and strikes. And now that we don't have that element as readily available, it will be interesting to see how they can insert themselves into the game with regard to the debate with an umpire.
Just kind of a different subject, but I want to get your take on this. So what do you think is the ideal outfield that the Cardinals and Ollie will run out there? Just say like for opening day this season.
Boy, that's maybe the hardest question for me, because I guess I'll ask you this. Is your outfield offensive driven or defensive driven?
And that's the part where I'm kind of stuck on, right? Is that's what it's dependent on.
Newt's in center field. Newt's in center field. Donovan in left for me, and Gorman at second.
Who's in center?
Newt.
No. Newt's
Siani?
the third best center fielder on this team.
But he's also,
in my opinion.
Yeah. But he's also.
But you wanted offense, right?
Well, yeah.
Okay. If you want an offense, that's probably your team. But if you want defense, then I'm probably Scott, Siani, Walker, because two of those three can cover a whole lot of real estate. Now, where you hit them in the order, that's a different story. I think the key here in this spring is how well the Siani hit. I've seen Scott swing a little different than what I saw last year, but again, we haven't played a week's worth of baseball yet. And I try and judge these things in sections. The first week or two, you're just trying to get yourself acclimated. The second week, you're trying to make adjustments on what you've seen and what you've taken into spring training. And the third segment is getting yourself ready for the season. That means you're playing at least seven innings. That means you're facing pitchers who throw more breaking balls. And the pitchers are trying to bear down too. And I think the challenge for a manager is making sure Siani and Scott get enough early at bats where they can face guys who are throwing a little bit more of this and throwing a changeup and all speed stuff that was getting them out last year. The key for both of those guys is not to get themselves out. Make that pitcher get you out with a good pitch that even if you did swing at it, you couldn't put it in play. If you get punched out on a really good pitch, tip your cap to the pitcher. But if you standing there, letting good pitches go by, that's a whole different subject.
Claibs, tell me if you agree with this. If you were, not that we are hitting coaches, but if you were to speak to Victor Scott II, would you suggest to him to never try to hit a home run?
You know what I would do? I would tell him to stress hitting in the middle of the field, because if he does that, he is going to hit home runs. Because, home run hitters, and here's the one thing, it's an interesting question, Randy, because when you go to watch batting practice, I can tell the guy who's got the wrong approach. When the first round he gets in the cage, he's trying to pull everything. He's trying to see how far he can hit it. Watch the good hitters, up right center, up left center, up the middle. That next round, they try and just see if they can find a little bit more pull or a little bit more pushing it the other way. And then that last round where you just want to turn it loose, then all of a sudden, you've got the swing down, you're staying down on the ball, and you let the bat do the rest of the work. And I've watched Scott take the approach of up the middle, right center. And all of a sudden now, because he's strong enough to hit home runs. I think he's stronger than Mason Wynn when it comes to home runs.
Wow.
I think last year things came at him in such a rush that he was trying to serve too many people in too many situations. And in just talking to him this year, he just said, man, I had to simplify some things. And I had to learn how to say one word, and that was no, because he had so much noise coming at him, whether it was coaches and family and friends and teammates. He needed to get back to knowing who Victor Scott II was. And I think he's on that path now.
That is just really interesting. And I didn't know if Ollie kind of has a plan on how he's going to approach this, if it's just kind of seeing what plays out during spring training with these guys of figuring out the outfield, or if we're kind of do like what we saw last year. I know the injuries were also a factor last year, but just kind of mixing and matching guys, because I think it matters too defensively, kind of to your question earlier. Of course, you want the best situation offensively for your outfield, because that was a struggle last year too. But then I think about Miles Michaelis when he's on the mound, having the best guys behind him defensively, even some of the young pitchers that they might put in there, possibly like a McGreevy or something. You do want to make sure that you have the best guys behind those pitchers.
Yeah. And that's a good point you make, Brooke. There's some pitchers that want some guys who can go get it. All right. You want some defense behind you, especially a guys like Miles, as you mentioned, who's a strike thrower. He's going to be in strike zone. Now, the key for Miles Michaelis is not to be up in the strike zone, but if he stays down in the strike zone, they put the ball in play. I would much rather have Victor Scott and or Mike Ciani going to the gap compared to having Lars Newbar or Brendan Donovan, both guys who are accomplished players. But I think those two in Scott and Ciani, they just cover a lot more ground.
I like that defense. How about this, though, as a happy medium? How about Wynn leading off, Donovan at second base hitting second, Contreras hitting third at first base, Gorman is your DH and hitting fourth, then Arenado, and then Walker, and then Newt in left field, Pages and Ciani. And that means that Alec Burleson is the guy that pays the price for Arenado being here.
Yeah, you could see that lineup. The thing is, moving Gorman up, I've got to make sure there's a guy behind him that Gorman's going to see good pitches, and I need to make sure somebody's on in front of him. I would like a little bit more speed in front of him, only because, Gorman is a guy that, I want him to see good fastballs. I want him to be able to drive the ball. I want to make sure that they're going to come after him because they know Arenado is on deck and Arenado can clear the bases with one swing of the bat. I really think that with all the information that is available to teams these days, Randy and Brooke, this is going to come down to at bat versus pitcher, and who does what against whom. And it's going to be broken down so much that it may be hard to understand, because here's the other thing we see now. We see pitchers who can go through the order twice, and then their batting average goes through the roof. The opponent's batting average goes through the roof that third time around, and they're never around for the fourth time. So you may have to say, all right, this is a guy we want to have because he's going to go through the order twice, and this guy hits him well. Now you say, all right, what's their bullpen look like? Well, this guy's going to come in, and we're going to maybe make a switch somewhere. The one thing that this team doesn't have, and maybe it's a good thing, they don't have very, very many areas where you can pinch run for a guy late. I mean, all the guys we have are reasonably good base runners, and the ones who are not as swift as you would want them to be probably prove themselves to be valuable defensively. So if you want to pinch run Pages, if you want to pinch run who? I mean, you think about go up and down the order. Everybody's a guy who's a reasonably adept base runner. So it kind of takes that speed element of Scott and or Ciani, who stole 20 bases last year. It kind of takes them off the table as far as being effective late in the game, other than being a defensive replacement. And, we don't know how good Jordan Walker is going to be late in the game. So that may be another thing where until there is a proven set of data for Jordan Walker's improvement to play in the outfield late in the game, there's another area where you may have a place for Victor Scott or Ciani.
I want to go back to something that Mike Shannon always told us about as young broadcasters and young baseball observers. And he said, production isn't always real. Sometimes a guy can be just getting lucky and get a bloop here, bloop there. Sometimes you can be hitting the daylights out of the ball, but it's right at people. So with that as a backdrop, how has Jordan Walker looked in the first 3 or 4 games at the plate?
I like it. I like his swing. He's closed his stance a little bit. His hands are a little closer together. The hits he turned on a pitch yesterday, and it was a great at bat for Walker. This pitcher was doing a really nice job against the Cardinals. And he had Walker. He threw him a pitch that he stayed off of. Then he threw him another pitch, threw him a pitch inside, and he turned on it and he hooked it foul. So it was a 2-ball, 1-strike count, hitter's count. And Walker just sat on a pitch and turned on that pitch for a double, along with a base hit he had up the middle. So I'm liking what I see. And again, it's a very minuscule sample size. But can you imagine if he looked bad on 4 at-bats this early in the year when people would be like setting their hair or looking for the matches to set their hair on fire? So you have to take the wins. You have to take the wins when you can. And, you build on them from there. And on the other side of that coin, if a person gets out to a really rough start, you can always use the excuse, well, it's early. So there's really no wrong answer in this situation. But when you do have positive results, obviously that's a confidence builder.
Claibs, are you on the Gulf of America side, or did you stay back in?
No, I decided to stay on the Atlantic Ocean side for now. And I will be watching the game today. Randy, senior status allows you not to make those trips anymore.
That's a good thing. Yeah.
As I look around and I think Derek Gould was trying to do a little tally of amount of spring trainings. And I think Derek thought he had a significant lead over everyone else. So he's going to this guy, he's asking him, well, how many years? So Derek, I've got 21, and so they get to me. I'm like, well, I'm certain this is 40, but it might be 41. So when you have that status, you pick your road trips to go on. And this is one, we'll hold off on.
I was wondering, it's 11:45 in Florida right now. I was wondering what time your tea time was. I didn't know you were going to watch the game.
No, you know what? So here's the good thing about that. We have a day tomorrow. The Cardinals are in Tampa taking on the Yankees. And I think 9:17 is the tea time tomorrow.
All right,
so
there you go.
I'll be ready to go.
That's what
I'll
be
ready to go. It's interesting you bring that up because I really haven't had a chance to play much golf. I have a little bit of a hand injury, which is kind of backed me off a little bit, but I'm going to go out and give it a twirl tomorrow and see how it works and go see one of my good buddies over here who's been one of the exceptional golf teachers down here, Warren Botke. And he was Brooks Koepka's guy early in the game. Oh. And he's a Jupiter guy. Well, he's a Philadelphia guy. And the reason why he and I became good friends, we would talk Dick Allen all the time.
Oh, cool.
And he gets a kick out of that. So I'll go over and work with him a little bit tomorrow, and then I'm gonna go out and play.
By the way, Dick, I wanted we'll do a minute here because Dick Allen got a rap as a bad guy around baseball. I never met him, but he got a rap as a bad guy. It's amazing though to talk to people in baseball, Gene Gieselman, Al Roboski, the people that were around Dick Allen. They say he was a great guy.
I never heard a teammate say a bad thing about him. And I've gotten to know Dick's brother, his son, and met him a couple of times late in his life. And he was an engaging guy. But here's the thing about Dick Allen. Dick Allen didn't have a problem pushing back. Now, you have to remember that the era that he came up in the 60s. And you had some media guys that were trying to put Dick Allen in his place. And Dick had instructions for what that was going to be all about. And it was more of a rival issue than a fan or a player issue. And it's unfortunate that we have charged people to go into the Hall of Fame or have a voice to get in the Hall of Fame. And they've taken that responsibility and made it a personal responsibility or personal grudge compared to actually assessing the numbers. And I think Dick Allen was part of that. Anybody who saw him play, and I did, Randy, he hit a ball at the old Busch Stadium off the stadium club window. And as he was coming around second base, a ball came out on the field, and he thought the ball got away in the bullpen because the bullpens were on the field then. No, it was the ball he hit off the window that bounced all the way back to the infield. In my lifetime, the strongest player I ever saw with a bat in his hand.
Wow.
Period. And and this is pre-weight room, pre-juice, pre-whatever you want to take. This is just a incredibly strong man with a bat. And I repeat, do not hang a breaking ball to him or throw him. I mean, he was as good of a breaking ball hitter as I've ever seen. So I'm glad he's in. And the great thing about it, for me, one of the great experiences, I had a chance to spend the evening with Dick Allen Jr., who I've known for a number of years, the night they made the announcement that he was going in.
Cool.
And we just sat there and told Dick Allen stories. And he was a legend, man. I mean, he hit some of the longest home runs in the history of baseball.
That's great. We'll enjoy that time tomorrow on the course. And we appreciate you joining us today from down in Florida. It's 66 degrees in St. Louis today, by the way.
Well, we're going to get up in the 70s today, but it's a little breezy. So I'm just going to make sure the breeze is behind me tomorrow.
There you go, brother.
Nice.
All right, you guys have a great day. Love the show, by the way. Keep it up.
Thanks,
have fun.
We'll see you later.
You got it.
That's our buddy Mike Claiborne with us.
He's got it figured out for spring training and how he approaches the winter, because he leaves right when it gets really bad. And so he's able to enjoy the warmth down in Florida. And then by the time he gets back here, it's getting a little bit warmer. Sometimes. I know April is still pretty chilly here too.
Yeah, but he's brilliant in the way he does that. So,
I know. Yeah.
You got to give him credit. He's got it figured out. Hey, we want you to know that you can check out Sports Hub 365. Is that what we were doing here? Or were we going to do something different?
No, you can do Cards Hub.
Cards Hub 365.
It works perfectly because there's Claibs right there mentioning.
There you go. Powered by Gray Bar. Comes up today at 3 right here on Sports Hub STL's YouTube page. Joe Roderick and Mike Claiborne will be live right here on the Sports Hub STL. And you can join us on YouTube after the Cardinals face the Blue Jays down in Florida. You can also get the show on demand from YouTube following the live broadcast as well on Apple, Spotify, or any other major podcast outlet. Cards Hub 365, daily Cardinals content right here on Sports Hub STL, powered by Gray Bar.
Now it's time for the Grim Report.
Grim Report.
So we were talking about trade rumors with the Cardinals, but the Cardinals are not the only team in town that has a lot of trade rumors swirling around them. The Blues is another team. Look, I think that we can all agree that the playoffs are a long shot at this point for the Blues.
5 points out with 20-something to play.
Yeah, it would be a pretty tall hill to climb there. So there's a lot of trade rumors, and we talked about this last week, but you looked at Jordan Binnington and how he performed in that championship game against Team USA and how they were able to win for Team Canada. And I think it changed a lot of people's perspective on Jordan Binnington. Because remember, we talked about it. I felt like a lot of the national writers needed to apologize to Jordan Binnington because they were making it seem like he was the reason that they lost in that first game. Yes.
And that was Canadian national writers, not the
Canadian.
US guys.
Yes. Yeah. Important to note there.
Yeah.
Because it seemed like everybody was really down on Jordan Binnington. But once again, he performed like how he did in 2019, really stood on his head in that performance. So now you look at pieces that you can trade for the Blues. Is Jordan Binnington high on that list after that Four Nations performance?
I think he is. I think his demand is going to be greater than it would have been had he not had that performance in the Four Nations. This is really difficult because this is a guy that made a great commitment to St. Louis. He signed a less than market value deal to be here. He's really integrated himself into the St. Louis community. He loves our town. He loves the organization. But for him and for the team, Brooke, when the team is ready to win a Stanley Cup again in 3 years, let's say it's 3 years. Snuggerud has been here for a couple of years. Dvorsky has been here for a couple of years. Lindstein has been here for a couple of years. You've got Thomas and Kyrou at the back end of their prime, and Buchnevich. You've kind of restocked the defense. So you've got that. When you have the next core ready to win, is Jordan Binnington still going to be a goalie that you say, okay, at the age of 35, this is a guy that can play 6 months and then 2 months in the playoffs and lead us to a Stanley Cup championship?
Well, I think that if you move Jordan Binnington, then you're going from this being a retool, which is what they tried to keep this in, as being marketed as a retool where you might get into the playoffs or you might be close to it. It moves from that, where if you move Binnington, then it's going to be a rebuild at that point. But to your point, you have so many young guys that are coming up. Is that necessarily a bad thing? It's a youth movement that we talked about the Cardinals, then happening with the Blues.
I think a lot of it has to actually fall on Binnington. Hey, do you want to be here? Do you want to go through this where we probably are not going to be a Stanley Cup championship contender for a couple of years? Do you want to stick around through the growing pains for these players and be part of what we are? There are some players that love that. Last year, I believe it was last year, that Army called Sundqvist and said, hey, I can send you to a team that has a chance to win, or you can stay here in St. Louis. And he said, I want to stay in St. Louis. Signed an extension. I would think that Jordan Binnington, because he's already got his ring and he's got more money than he could ever spend, would like the idea of trying to run it back in St. Louis with a different group of guys.
Well, and you think about too with Hofer, he's in a final year of a 2-year, $1.55 million contract, and he will be a restricted free agent this summer. So with arbitration rights, that's kind of another layer to this of you are going to keep Hofer around. And if you keep Binnington, that is quite a bit of money tied up in two of your goalies.
And my question would be, Brooke, do we really know how good HOFer is? Because
you have to explain why you say HOF.
Because my iPhone, when I try to
when you put it in there,
when I say Hofer is great, it does the HOF in capitals and then ER. So that's why I call him Joel Hofer, HOFer. But here's my thing. With him, we thought Billy Husso was that guy a few years ago, didn't we? And he hasn't wound up being that guy. It's kind of scary if you don't really know what the guy is capable of. And we don't really know what a guy like Hofer is capable of, Matthew.
So you're telling me the goalie position is volatile?
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe trading a volatile player at a volatile position at his highest value left in his career is a good move?
Well, here's the thing. I don't think that Binnington in 6 years now, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 7 years, I don't think Jordan Binnington has ever been bad. I think he's been average. That's as far as he has fallen. I don't think that he's ever been bad. Now,
and playoff Binnington is different than fantastic. Regular season Binnington.
But to your point, though, Matthew, the key there is his market value ever going to be any higher? And the question that the Blues have to ask themselves is, okay, is he going to be this guy that just won the Four Nations and is going to probably be the starter for the Canadians in the Olympics next year? Is he going to be our goalie the next time we're prepared to win a Stanley Cup? That only Doug Armstrong and the Blues front office can answer that question about their timeline. Now, Binnington, there was a story that JR had in The Athletic about Binnington and the possibility of the Blues trading him. But Jamal Mayers, part of our team here on Sports Hub STL, was talking about the trade deadline and said that Binnington isn't necessarily the only guy that needs to be thinking about being moved on March 7th.
Oh, I think that's fair. And also, I would be okay with multiple moves. I know Andy Strickland was tweeting about the possibility of Braden Shen. I thought there were some funny responses to that when somebody said, you'll take a second rounder and 50% salary retention and you'll like it, which I think is probably accurate. But I just think, man, 3 years seems like a very, I'm not saying unrealistic, I'm saying optimistic timeline that you gave, Randy. That's a very optimistic version of the timeline. And I just think, isn't 5 years maybe a little bit more likely? More realistic, yeah. I guess. Yeah, and so I just think that, like, when you widen the scope from like a 3 to a 5 year thing, all of a sudden the chances of Binnington being a part of it become extremely thin.
Yeah.
And that's why I think cash in now and go forward. At the same time, though, we're also dealing again with a coach or a manager like you, who we know who has said kind of jokingly that he's okay with leaving a problem for the next person.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's also that factor where if he's thinking narrow, which that quote makes me think he does think narrow, then we're not wrong that this is the better way to look at it, but we're wrong to think that this is what the Blues are going to see from it.
And I guess, Brooke, one of the other things we have to look at 3 years down the road, we know pretty sure that Ryan Suter's not going to be here.
Yes.
I think we could probably pretty much guess that Cam Fowler's not going to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Is Justin Falk going to be a part of that? 35-year-old at that point, Colton Parayko. So who are your defensemen? Who is your defense 3 years down the road too?
That's a good question there, because that's what you have to look at. Do you have the Jamal clip, Rocchio?
Yeah, let's hear.
Can you play that?
Jammer. This is Jammer on Sports.
The decisions that have to be made, and you think about it, it's nice that they got this victory, but it's tough because now they're 5 points behind Vancouver, but you have 4 teams to jump. You've got to jump the Ducks, you got to jump Utah, Calgary, and Vancouver. Like, it's not just the points, it's the fact you have to jump so many teams. So at some point, with only 23 games now remaining, you've got to decide organizationally, what are we going to do? And for me, Justin Falk is at top of that list. Yes, he has 2 years remaining at $6.5 million cap hit. You got Krug, who's also in the same boat, similar, same amount of term remaining, has injury concerns, and maybe they'll be able to get out of that contract. Who knows what's going to happen with that situation, whether he'll remain on long-term IR or he'll come back and play. And then you've got Nick Leddy, who also has 2 years remaining at $4 million. I don't see 2 of those 3 remaining on the roster. So you know what? If Falk's going to play well leading into this is the perfect time to actually go out there and see what you could get for him. And then you think on the front end, as much as we love Schenner, you know what? There's been a lot of talk around the league about what he could provide for a playoff contending type of team. I know he loves it here in St. Louis, but at some point you have to realize, if we're going to retool, what are the changes and the moves that Army's going to make, that they're going to find a way to retool this group and make some changes so that, they're not just on the cusp, because it's, in my opinion, it's always tough to be 17 to 22, just outside the playoff picture. And then it comes to June, you don't get that high draft pick that you'd really like. It's almost like, okay, is this a time to take a step back? Perhaps they fall off a little bit, but maybe you get yourself in a better draft position.
And that was Jamal Mayers. And you can watch, that was a part of Blues Hub Weekly, by the way, which airs every Sunday at 7:30. So you can hear from Jamal and Mike Meyer, who is also writing for the Blues, and he covers a lot about them. But I think that's a really interesting point about Jamal, about the guys who are most likely the trade candidates. Brayden Schenn is a name that we keep seeing over and over again. And even with Binnington too, I wouldn't be surprised if Army's taking phone calls on all these guys. Of course, he's going to do his due diligence and look at that. We're just trying to figure out, is this a retool phase? And I would consider it if you have Binnington still around, or are you rebuilding? What's the path forward? And that's going to affect Alexander Steen.
No doubt when he comes in as the POHO. I think one of the things that I would be concerned about, Brooke, is if you don't have Brayden Schenn as your captain and as your leader in that room. And I've talked to people that are around the room a lot, in and outside the organization. And he's really kind of the only leader they have. There aren't many people that can get people to follow them on their team. Justin Falk is a quiet guy. Parayko he leads by example. He doesn't say an awful lot. Thomas hasn't ascended to that level yet. Kyrou certainly is not at that level yet. I just don't think at this point a guy like Suter, who's a great guy and everybody loves, but he hasn't been around long enough to really own that room. I think Brayden Schenn's the only guy they have right now that, letter or not, is capable of being a leader in that room.
And also what you're okay with getting in return, because Matt chimes in on the chat. He says, you don't get nothing for goalies unless there's an actual good return. Why give him up? Which is a good point. I don't think that you should expect anything less than a first round pick for Jordan Binnington. And what about, I was trying to think last night about teams that would be the most likely candidate who needs like a big time goalie right now. The Oilers are really the only team that I could think about.
Yeah. And they've got cap issues themselves, although the cap is going up in the next couple of years. But the Oilers would certainly benefit from the presence of Jordan Binnington. Man, I'd hate to have him in my conference, though, if I were the Blues.
Yeah, that's a big issue. You were going to say something, Rocchio?
Yeah, Hockey Dad Don, if you move Binnington, who would be our backup, first of all, Binnington would still be there. So you'd be fine. Well, if you traded Binnington would still be there. But no, after you trade away Binnington, it doesn't matter who your backup is. You're going to lose a lot of games, and you're going to get another good young player who can help you out in the 5-year window. That's the point. It works both ways.
Yeah. It's
like, oh my, what are we going to do with this David Robinson now that he's hurt himself? I don't know. Suck really bad and draft Tim Duncan. Like, this has been done before.
Right. Yeah. I just, you don't want to go into that area where you earn the number one pick in the draft, because then you wind up where Chicago is, where Anaheim has been for nearly a decade, where Buffalo has been for multiple decades. You don't want to be that team that winds where Edmonton, they still haven't won a Stanley Cup, even though they've had all those top 5 choices in the draft. Well, it's a great thing to have superstars. It's not a great way to build a really good team.
Yeah. So Brendan weighs in. Bowman said he wouldn't trade for a goalie for the stretch run. I don't see another team that would want Benner at his price tag.
I'm not sure. And this is a unique year because Binnington just won that big game in the Four Nations tournament. So there might be a team out there. Now, with the combination of the cap and what he's getting, that might be the case that nobody's interested in Jordan Binnington, and I'm fine with that. If Jordan Binnington is the Blues goalie, I have no problem with it. I'm just wondering what they're thinking.
And I think it's just more about money. Now, the cap is going up. So that's something to note there, where maybe when we were talking about the price of keeping Binnington and Hofer would be a little much to have tied up in your netminders, but at the same time, the cap is going up. So that kind of adds to your point too.
Yeah. And at some point, like Boston did with Ullmark, at some point you can move a goalie, and it doesn't have to be during the season. You can move a goalie and get a pretty good haul.
Yeah.
If you have 2, and they had 2 legitimate number 1s last year in Boston, but if you have 2 number 1 goalies, one of them can net you a lot.
Yeah. It's still so weird, just kind of to wrap this up as we wrap up the Grim Report, but it's just so weird that there is kind of this parallel going on right now with the Cardinals and Blues of this youth movement that they're both kind of ushering in and new eras at the same time.
And then who do you think is doing better? Is somebody doing better than the other team?
I feel like the jury's still out on that, right?
Yeah,
it depends.
Both missing the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
And it's neither has developed a superstar, even though Thomas was supposed to be a superstar. Kyrou was, Jordan Walker was, Gorman was.
You have new Pobos and GMs in waiting.
Yeah. It was pretty interesting.
It is weird. Yeah. That's the Grim Report.
Maybe it's a plan.
No, that's not. Are you saying conspiracy that they're both working together? I don't. If anything, you would think that one of them would be like, "Oh, this is a great time to kind of take advantage of the St. Louis fan base a little bit more." You know?
Yeah.
Just saying. Yeah.
Could be happening.
That is the Grim Report. And we have to tell you guys about our newsletter.
Yeah. And make sure you've subscribed to that and subscribe to our YouTube page too. And like this show. If you haven't already, go to sportshubstl.com and sign up for the Hub newsletter. Sent to your inbox twice a week, and the first one is already out. Anytime St. Louis news breaks, you'll also get an email. You'll be the first to know about Sports Hub STL events and merchandise, get exclusive content and prize opportunities, and more. While you're on the site, check out all the St. Louis sports content, including game recaps, programming highlights, sports news and opinion, gambling tips, and more. It's all on the website at sportshubstl.com.
All right, we have Matthew's benchmark. I don't even know what your benchmark is today, Rocchio.
We're doing a surprise of a prize.
Yeah, it's more. I have some kind of topics that I've been building up that I wanted to talk about. So that's really what my benchmark today is going to be. You know, you guys are going to tell me to put myself in the window.
Put yourself in the little bubble.
Yeah, put myself in the little bubble.
There we go. There's
bubble. All right, there's the bubble. Hey, how's it going, everybody? So I'm just going to start a new segment. It's going to be called "What's Going On," and then I'm going to have a topic at the end. It's going to be what's going on in college basketball, because there's some weird things going on around this sport right now, and I want to talk about them right now. First of all, I'm going to go with the less weird of the two, but Front Office Sports did a very interesting article today, and it talked about how NBA players don't want to help out their collectives by dropping a bunch of money. And the reason why it jumped out to them is because James Harden is dropping a bunch of money into Arizona State's collective. And in fact, this is kind of funny if you're a Mizzou fan, because it turns out that when Mizzou was vying for Jaden Quaintance, who decommitted from Kentucky after Calipari left, Mizzou was in the running for him, but they lost him to Arizona State because James Harden put a big drop into their NIL. And so I thought it was fascinating that they actually interviewed a couple of NBA players who talked about why they aren't going to be putting their money into their NIL from their alma mater. This is from Front Office Sports. Is it an alma mater if you didn't graduate, but you played for them?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. I'm just wondering. One NBA All-Star requested anonymity to speak candidly about the NIL market. He's given back to his school throughout his career, but never to the NIL. You want me to pay $250,000 just to get a guy to come play for my school, and then I have to watch them potentially average 5 points per game and come off the bench? The market for this stuff is crazy. Several players have written huge checks instead to build practice facilities with their names on them. Carmelo Anthony at Syracuse, Kevin Durant at Texas, Russell Westbrook at UCLA, and Draymond Green at Michigan State. ESPN analyst and NBA champion Richard Jefferson did the same at Arizona at a cost of $3.5 million. He explained to Front Office Sports why he won't be funding their NIL collective anytime soon. Why would you invest your money in something that isn't regulated? You put that money into a pool and you can give a kid $1 million, and the next year someone can offer him $1.1 million at another school, and he can just go. If you want to invest in your school, invest in a practice facility, invest in something that can actually be there versus trying to buy players. That to me is a waste of time. But I mean, no consolation for Mizzou fans. You lost out on a really good pick, because like the one NBA player who is willing to give money dropped a bucket into Arizona State and you lost him. But hey, at least, you don't have to worry about somebody being like, oh, don't worry, Jason Tatum's going to drop $5 million into Duke. Not like they have issues anyhow. So I just thought it was fascinating that these players are like, I'm not buying into this. There's also some other points in the Front Office Sports article, which is really good, where they think that there's something to do with NBA players who went to college pre-NIL being kind of mad about these guys getting NIL and kind of being a little bit jaded and not wanting to then pay college players money that they themselves could not make.
That's an interesting take.
Yeah, I thought so.
It just seems like they always want somebody else to pay. Like these guys that are making $35 million a year have no problem letting somebody else buy them drinks at a bar and stuff like that. That's just
a lot of freebies.
It's you don't get to be a billionaire by spending money on somebody else.
That's very fair.
Yeah.
Speaking of not being a billionaire, I don't think this is going to get him to billionaire status, but we saw yesterday at the end of the show, because it happened during the show, that Adrian Wojnarowski, if you guys know him, obviously he's the reporter from ESPN who retired, and now he has become the GM of St. Bonaventure's basketball. And he's got a way to make the Bonnies some money for the NIL collective, and it's very early NIL collective because he's selling things from his ESPN career. In fact, if you guys take a look here, and I'm sorry, Brooke, for cutting you out there. Let's get you to this screen. There we go. Woj is selling different things for the Bonnies NIL collective. And I've put up what I thought was some of the best things that we've seen so far. His ESPN ID badge, which right now is going for apparently $2,000. He also has his last finals credentials going for $650. Another one that he's got is the iPhone used to break the Paul George Kawhi to LA Clippers trade, going for $1,500. And right alongside the Disney Pass, the $2,000 is the high level mark right now, and the other one is the iPhone used to break NBA suspending the season because of COVID.
That's amazing.
How many iPhones did he have?
That's another thing. He had a lot of iPhones apparently, and I think he's talked about it before about why he used to change out iPhones for different reasons. I'm sure it's because too many people got the number or something along those lines, or somebody got the number he didn't want to have the number. I just thought it was absolutely hilarious that I think they're going to get $15,000 from this. And then somebody who went to St. Joe's and still lives in New York and works on Wall Street is just going to be like, okay, here's $1 million. Have Woj go digging for more credentials. You're like, it seems like such a weird drop in the bucket kind of thing. And I get it's probably more for just PR, because this is Woj and he's a big name. And this is why you hired him to be the GM of Bonnies basketball, is because he's got a name in these kind of things. But I just think it's funny that in an era when NIL again is a conversation about James Harden winning Arizona State, a player they weren't in on because he was able to drop $2 million on him really quickly. It's funny to me that Woj is like, this is what we're doing for the NIL, and it's going to make him like $20,000.
I wonder at what point
this is unethical.
People start saying, okay, what am I getting out of this? And I know this happened. I have a friend who's a big booster of the Arkansas baseball program and has a box.
A little plug there.
Yeah. Arkansas baseball. Well, Johnny Tyson. No, not Tyson. Is it Johnny Tyson? Whatever, the guy who's with
Tyson.
Tyson Chicken.
Yeah.
He got Calipari there, but there was another guy.
Yeah, that was mentioned.
That has a box, and the two guys were talking, and one said to the other, I'm giving all this NIL money, but I don't feel like I'm getting anything out of it. And the other guy said, well, you're never going to get anything out of it. All you're paying for is for your team to have a chance to win, but you're not going to get anything out of it. I wonder at what point a lot of people start saying, okay, I'm giving $1 million to this player, but it's too much of a loss leader for me to continue to do this.
Yeah, because it's not like you're donating to like a library where you can have your name forever attached to that
and
library
you're
or
doing
something
it
like that.
every year.
And and the people who donate to NIL are just completely behind the scenes. It's not like you can have the player be like, I'm brought to you by Tyson Chicken.
Well, we could
you guys, you could.
Yeah, you definitely could do that.
Actually, good. But I'm thinking, well,
we could get a player that's a guest on here, and I know Dave Green is happy to shell out, $1 million a year to get
that's what I heard.
Player on Sports Hub STL.
Yeah. I think that's the going rate, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
If you're listening to us right now, is about $1 million that he's willing to drop. But don't you remember when Dennis Gates came to Mizzou? He was named, like, they wanted him to be called a specific thing. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, no, teams now have sponsorships for the head coach title. Yeah.
At Stanford years ago.
Yeah.
But I just remember that they wanted you to call him that. So unless I guess you could kind of attach your name in that way to a player or coach, where everybody, if they referred to you, they would have to say that full sentence before.
I wonder if a player would agree to that.
Enough money, I think they would.
And this is kind of an older story. We didn't get to talk about it, but I was mad, and I almost made this my hill to die on, but I'm not going to. Are you guys aware of how do I put this? Dan Dakich acting like a 7-year-old around Mizzou basketball right now? Have you been aware of this? So Dan Dakich obviously connected to IU. He played there. He was a coach there before he became an ESPN personality. Now he works at Outkick. He was very mad that Tamar Bates had the temerity to walk into the weight room when he was first being recruited or when he first signed to Indiana. He walked into the weight room when other players were there and acted, quote unquote, like he owned the place. I don't know what that means. It's a completely subjective thing to judge somebody on. And so let's obviously carry it for a decade, like a normal person would. So anyway, he, quote unquote, walked into the weight room like he owned the place while other players were working out. Again, I don't know what that means. And because of that, Dan Dakich called that he would never work out in Indiana. He transferred from Indiana because it wasn't going great there. Fairness to Dan Dakich, he was kind of right about that. Not sure that was the reason, but he was right about the fact that he didn't flourish at Indiana. And then he obviously flourishes at Mizzou. He has a big game against Bama, 13 points, 4 steals. And it comes out, and Dennis Gates, kind of brings up the comments, and he's like, I think it's kind of weird. Guys grow. I think it's weird comments. And Dan Dakich then decides to double down or triple down. He's like, I'm not wrong. I was correct then that he wasn't right for Indiana basketball. And he's like, and then he did my favorite ego thing, which is just, he did like an I'm the greatest thing where he's like, when I talk, the New York Times picks it up and coaches talk about it in the post game. Yeah, because you're a ridiculous human being who's, yes, you have a strong connection to college basketball. There's no doubt about it. 30 plus years in college basketball, credit to you, sir. But like acting like a 12-year-old is just the weirdest thing I've ever seen about it. Just keep going after a guy who's bettered himself, who's clearly like a great father and a great basketball player. And there's a lot of positives you could take about it. It could be this story that actually shows the positives of the transfer portal when a guy doesn't have to sit out for a year. And therefore, maybe because of a situation like he has where he is a father, it doesn't completely change his college basketball plan because he doesn't have to sit out. And then there's no way of him to, be connected to a program. There's no way for him to get financial aid and those kind of things. Instead of looking at it as a positive thing, he decides this is his time to take a victory lap. Yeah. In the biggest dick fashion I've ever seen somebody take a victory lap before. Unbelievable. I mean, this is a bat flip and flipping off the crowd. I've never seen anything like this from the preeminent voice in college basketball.
And first of all, not quite.
Yeah, no, you're
but
right.
Second of all, doesn't it seem like right now the people that are good for Indiana can actually play?
Yeah.
That's what they should be looking at is, can the guy play? Don't worry about how he is in the gym. Don't worry about what he says to the media or to other students. Worry about, at this stage of Indiana's history, worry about whether or not a guy can play.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
It's weird.
And by the way, they did get 3 big NIL guys this year, Indiana did, and it just hasn't worked out for them.
No.
So I wonder if he's pounding on those guys too.
Probably not. That would make sense if he was. It seems like it would make it a little more fair.
This is part of a larger thing, and I know this is Brooke's gonna like lose her lunch when I say this, but it's just like I like right why is everyone like why does everything have to be negative?
Why would I lose my lunch?
Because I thought you think that was hypocritical coming from me. Because I'm usually very negative about things, but my problem is just that and Gabe DeArmond did a great post about this. I don't know if you guys saw that, where he's just like, whatever happened to fandom being about enjoying sports and not just like miring yourself in just like anger and victimhood consistently and constantly over and over again. I'm dealing with the same thing right now with Billikens fans I run across who are doom and gloom about next year. It's like the roster is going to be terrible next year. This program is going to essentially fold. And I'm like, why? Like, whatever happened to having a little positivity as a fan? The Rams went 1-15, and I was the next year. You could have found me in July being like, yeah, I think 8-8's a possibility. Sure, yeah. Delusional fandom, and maybe this is a combination of me now dealing with more fans who are in their 30s and naivete and hope is dead now. But it blows my mind that I just don't come across people who still hold positivity. Even I'm not saying be naive. I'm not saying think the Rams can go 8-8 after going 1-15. But why always the focus on the negative?
We've learned that negativity sells. It's something that in all aspects of society. It's not just in sports. Negativity works. Negativity can get you to go a long way.
It can.
Maybe the longest way.
I mean, if you even think just about how TV has changed, like if you even watch whatever channel that you want to watch, if you want to watch ESPN, if you want to watch Fox, if you want to watch CNN, it has all turned into not even just like reporting anymore. It's just people arguing with each other. Yeah. That's literally what it's turned into.
And the interesting thing here is that Dennis Gates is such a relentlessly positive guy. And by the way, he is the Witten family men's basketball head coach.
That's what it was. Yeah, because I remember that they really wanted you to actually reference him in that way.
I wonder if Mike does that in the pregame show. Mike Kelly. Now we visit with the Witten family men's basketball head coach, Dennis Gates. We'll have to listen next time.
Yeah.
Pregame show tonight before South Carolina.
I also got to say, like, I hate that too, that like now we can't have debate shows because we can't actually like have like a back and forth consistently.
We've embraced debate.
And that's the thing. And again, that's cliche. Now it's, well, you're having a hot take. It's like, we used to just talk about sports in this way without it being this weird, like.
Here's the thing. It's not debate anymore because nobody can win because everybody is so intransigent with how the depth of their opinion, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Intransigent. I said that wrong.
You got it.
But people refuse to be open-minded and have a debate in which they could actually have their mind changed by somebody who's smart and is making good points.
There's no wonder have to change anybody's mind sometimes too. A healthy debate's that's fine. Good, yeah. It's good to have opposing views so that you understand other people's perspectives.
I think no one wants to be surprised. I think that's the thing. Is like when you get new information, it can be a little bit surprising. And I think nowadays, I think no one wants to be surprised anymore. We've been surprised too many times in our life at this point. We now want everything to just be.
No, everybody thinks they're the smartest person, and so they get aggravated whenever somebody doesn't. Agree with them.
No, but I am though.
Sandwich Man is on the YouTube chat. He says, "Don't worry, Rock. There's still a chance the Rams come back to St. Louis. It could happen.
Don't. You know what? I would very much like to ban you from the chat for such an insulting comment. Don't toy with my emotions like that.
That's just no. They are toying with your emotions.
It's not going to happen, and I don't appreciate that comment from Sandwich Man. You know what? Frankly, a little cruel.
I think the NFL is not ever going to come back to St. Louis.
No.
I think that ship has sailed.
Maybe I'll become a Titans fan.
Yeah, why not?
Or a Colts fan.
Oh no.
Or a Bears fan. The problem is, okay, why is every other team that's within a 5-hour drive of St. Louis, other than the one I refuse to be a fan of, complete crap right now?
Maybe you should be a fan of the one.
Nope. I'm not. I'm not becoming a Chiefs fan. You tell me you want me to wear something like that has KC on it in like a positive, non-ironic way.
Why not?
I refuse.
Why? What's the point of that?
Basic stubbornness.
Okay, that's fair. Good. You don't have to, by the way, like a team that's within every game's on TV. You can find every game.
You can find
on TV.
anything.
I know.
Yeah, you can pick some other.
Because I don't know. I want to go to an NFL game again. I haven't been to one since Ketchup and Mustard, Randy.
You notice like kind of like how this segment whole like kind of revolves around like, the negativity, and then he's like, I don't want to rep anything Kansas City. The irony in that.
That's not negativity. That's just honesty.
Here we go. I've got a hold on here. 1 second. I'm going to be off camera for a second.
What's happening?
Okay, I can switch just to Brooke on camera. You're still on camera now, though.
This is my team here.
There you go.
Yeah. Oh no, it's just faded.
Yeah, it's a true bobblehead. Yeah, it's still the crimson and cream. Yeah, I'm a Gridbird guy.
I like that.
And this is the amount of Super Bowl wins they have.
And Brooke, in fairness, I'm being very negative about something that, there's a lot of history to. There's, that, come on now, that's a little bit different. Tamar Bates did nothing to hurt Dan Dockich. Kansas City has done a lot to hurt me.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Never going to Kansas City.
Never.
All right, that is Matthews' benchmark, and we have today's overarching item as our last topic. Do we need to talk about the kickoff party one more time, just to remind everybody? What do we have?
Here we've got quite a day here. We've got
This,
so at
yes.
noon you've got the Cardinals, right? So we've got Cards Hub post game. That's at about 3:00 after the Cardinal game, and then the Billikens start at 6.
Probably about 8:15 for the post game.
8:15 for the post game there. Blues start at 7. So we're probably looking at a 9:30 post game there.
9:30, 9:45.
And then Mizzou plays at 8 on ESPNU.
10:15, right after the Blues post game wraps up, you'll have Kareem Rush talking a little Mizzou as they try to bounce back from that falter against Arkansas with, I would probably say, the weakest team in the SEC.
I would say so. So 4 games today, 4 post game shows right here on Sports Hub STL. Just to join us on YouTube after all the games, and you'll be able to participate and you'll be able to chat. The YouTube chat will be open and you'll be able to react to all of the games today. And don't forget, we've got so much stuff happening. You need to subscribe to the newsletter to find out what's happening here at Sports Hub STL. And you need to subscribe. This is a big thing. Need to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We've all done that.
Yes.
Now it's your responsibility. You're already watching, so just click the subscribe button.
Just do it.
There you go.
Do it.
Yeah.
Like and subscribe.
And then follow us on all the socials at Sports Hub STL. We love being with you every day here from 10 to 11:30ish. It's
11:30ish. Yeah. And then today's overarching item, Rocchio, you just talked about it there, but Mizzou playing tonight against South Carolina. That game against Arkansas, they did lose, but they had that huge game against Alabama going in. And they didn't get knocked down. They actually moved up in the rankings,
moved up a
correct?
spot. Yeah.
I think that shows that a lot of people are now buying into Mizzou being a real deal.
I think so. And 14th in the country. I'll be interested to see if they are by the end. And it depends, I guess, a lot on how they do in the conference tournament. But I could easily see Mizzou being a top 4 seed. Couldn't you?
I could. Yeah.
Top 12 team in the country is thought of by the committee because here they are. If they finish 3rd or probably 4th, more like 4th in the SEC in the toughest conference in the land, and then have a decent run, win a couple of games in the tournament, I think there's a really good chance of them being in the top 4.
Are you guys surprised about Arkansas and the way that they're struggling with Coach Cal there?
I am not because of what happened.
I kind of like it.
Yeah, it's
Is that bad?
No, it's not.
Is that bad?
With what happened with him down the stretch at Kentucky. Now he was making NCAA tournaments, but he
almost said he was going to be there forever. He was basically saying he's going to stay at Kentucky forever.
Right. But here's what happened. NIL and the transfer portal, that combination ruined everything for him at Kentucky, didn't it? Mm-hmm. Because now everybody can pay players and get them there. And his whole thing was, I'm going to get you paid. You're going to be a one and done. Then you're going to go get a multi-million-dollar contract from the NBA. Well, Duke started doing that and getting the one and dones. Jason Tatum, the most famous St. Louis, and to accomplish that, everybody started doing the one and dones. And then once players started getting paid, here's the thing. Kentucky is a great historic program, but where is the money for Kentucky coming from? From the bourbon industry or something like
Kroger.
that? There's a reason that Houston's in the top 5, right? Because they
from
got
the
that
bourbon
Houston
industry.
Yeah, Houston's got that oil money coming in. You look at Auburn. Auburn has put a lot of money, and Bruce Pearl's always been really good at getting money and paying players, regardless of where he's been. But Auburn has put a ton of resources. Actually, it seems like more than the football team into the basketball team now.
Yeah, because of Bruce Pearl.
Yeah.
I also think that's just because, I mean, think about the bang for your buck.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fascinating that we're getting back to this because the front office sports article that I talked about earlier also touched on this, which is $2 million to an NIL collective in basketball potentially gets you one player who can carry you to an NCAA tournament. $2 million in a football collective is a drop in the bucket relative to getting that, to pulling the kind of roster you need to compete with the Oregons and the Alabamas and the Texases and what have you. And so that aspect of basketball, I think when you're talking about Auburn, they can, they can hope they get lucky with a Cam Newton again and, have to pay him $5 million, or they can pay $3 million to a guy who can lead them on another Final Four run. And we've seen what that's done for that program.
I wonder if Charles Barkley gives Auburn money. Duke has a lot of alums, right? A lot of money that
indirectly.
That are giving money to that program. Florida has enough wealthy graduates that they can handle it. Houston, obviously. Tennessee, I think, is the first or second highest NIL budget in America. And there's a lot of money in Tennessee now. Alabama's interesting at number 6 because I still wonder where ultimately the Alabama money is going to come from.
They have rich alums.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, high acceptance rate.
Yeah. So it's the point being that it's not as easy for an Ole Miss or Mississippi State these days to generate enough NIL money to have a highly competitive team.
We have a comment from Brandon. STL has all the teams we're ever going to get. What about an NBA team? I know that, obviously the past history, but still.
I don't see it happening.
Really?
The reason that I don't, number one, I love the market, but we are a declining market. I think we're the only market in the top 30 that has a declining population, which is not good.
Sad.
It is kind of sad. And then the other thing is, if you're the NBA, number one, owners don't like to share a lot of revenue, and they've pretty much already locked in on Seattle and Vegas as their next 2 franchises. And then they want to go international.
Seattle keeps getting things.
Yeah, because they've got a good market with a strong foundation with Amazon and Microsoft and people buying ramshackle homes for $1 million.
I don't think that's the one. I mean, I have no problem. I have no qualms about Seattle having justice delivered back to them.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
No, that one's different. We can instead we can bitch about
cities
Vegas.
that always are talked about getting new teams are Seattle, Vegas. I'm trying to think about who.
Well,
man, you're really having
you're
really a blind spot to the east right now, Brooke. No offense or anything.
Oh yeah.
What other city keeps getting thrown around and for a new baseball team? And what other city? Interesting.
You know.
But I don't see it happening. In fact, I think there's probably a stronger likelihood of franchises leaving downtown St. Louis rather than entering downtown St. Louis.
I don't want to hear that, Randy.
I don't either. But it is what it is. Somehow we need to turn things around. I don't know when.
Dear sweet God, vote.
What?
It's a dear sweet God, vote.
Yeah.
We have the Millennium Hotel, but you're right. You need a healthy downtown to be able to attract not only young professionals, but businesses. Yeah. If you look at I know that I don't want to talk about Nashville in every single show, but you look at Nashville, they are able to get in Nissan, they're able to get in Bridgestone, all these big major companies, Amazon, all that stuff, because they grew their downtown.
And Indianapolis did the same thing. Kansas City is doing the same thing. I know you hate KC, but Kansas City.
I haven't been.
Kansas City's downtown is thriving.
Oh, I will always, my parting shots as I lay waste to Kansas City verbally every time I bring it up, I will always couch it with beautiful city.
Yeah.
Love perfectly. It's laid out very well. They somehow find a way to like make everything kind of feel like you're in like a little neighborhood at all times, even when you're like in their downtown. I think they figure it out very well, just full of just the worst people.
So here's the thing. When we got the Rams, John Shaw, the president of the Rams at the time, asked former Senator Tom Eagleton, who had negotiated the deal to bring the Rams here, said, "What's St. Louis like?" And Senator Eagleton said, "Well, think of a raucous Des Moines."
Oh, no.
And now here we are 25 years later or whatever. And that's our comp. Our comp is literally, we are a raucous Des Moines.
I was going to go imagine if somebody shot Indianapolis in the head.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Indianapolis.
Is that not accurate?
Indianapolis has, they've exceeded us. It's kind of sad.
It shouldn't be that way. St. Louis has so much history.
Yeah, I don't think it.
There's a lot of things wrong, but we haven't embraced that the best thing we do is sports.
Randy, how many Super Bowls? Yeah, and the problem there is how many Super Bowls and Final Fours did Indianapolis have before we had to admit that?
Yeah,
like 4 combined,
right.
6.
Hey,
Jesus.
Still, it's the home of the NCAA. It's the amateur sports capital of the United States. They've got the combine there every year. They've got it going, and we just do not have it going right now, and we need better, stronger, more creative leadership. And that is our overarching item of the day. LOL, you have been go back to that? We've been torching the Cardinals and then complaining people aren't positive.
Oh, well, hold on a second.
I've been positive about the Cardinals. I like what they're doing.
We literally talked. The first segment was about trading Erick Fedde, but part of the reason was we are excited about what we saw from Tekoa Roby on Sunday, from Gordon Graceffo yesterday, and the fact that we want to see Michael McGreevy as a starter. Being negative about bad things is not a bad thing. Like that's like you should be negative about bad things. The problem is when you can't find the positive and neutral things, or you only focus on the negatives of a thing that has two sides. That's what we're complaining about. That's what we're saying people do too much.
To this question better than you two. Okay. Am I more positive about the 25 Cardinals than I was about the 24 Cardinals?
Yes.
I
would agree. Yeah. No, I think so. Because the difference is that they're kind of embracing the youth movement.
Yes.
We're not doing the whole
Mhm.
kind of fake championship talk,
Yeah,
even though I know that some people have brought it up. But
You're gonna
still,
say realism.
I think it's just more realistic, their approach going into
I'm
this
with you.
season.
Very important point here on the chat.
Yeah.
We do have a free zoo.
We do have the free zoo. Thanks,
do.
Waterboy. Long time listener.
But that's the point. You should be able to bring in more people to see that free zoo.
Right. They should be able to stay in downtown St. Louis. At some point, there's smart people there, and it's going to get better. It's just not the same people. It's Vervis Jones, it's Joyce Abusi, it's Darlene Green. It's the same people.
How can it be him though? He's not the mayor anymore.
Well, yeah, I think he's got the ear of the mayor.
Okay.
It's the same
Somehow,
people that are
some way.
running downtown that were running it 20, 25 years ago. So at some point, there's got to be some fresh thought and some fresh leadership for downtown St. Louis. And by the way, the rest of the city is much of the city is beautiful and great and has great restaurants and stuff. It's just downtown right now is troubled, and it's a shame.
Are you saying that we all work better together?
Yes, I would say that we all work better. Vote Michael Butler, who's for a merger. Good guy. Thank you, Matthew. Brooke, did you have fun today?
Yes, of course.
Our thanks to Claibs for joining us from Florida. And by the way, you've got Cards Hub 365 coming up at 3:00 and all of the games with all of the post games tonight here on Sports Hub STL. We will see you tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Until then, have a terrific Tuesday.